This just takes me a moment to do. It gets annoying. Okay, didn't work. You're live. Talk to people. I just got a problem with the screen.
Okay. I will get you. You have to close some doors because of that dog.
You're live. You're talking
Hello.
to people.
Sorry, it's like dog emergency there. Hi, my name is Paul J. Bennett, a Canadian author of epic
Technical
fantasy,
difficulties. They only see half you.
Sword and sorcery, and military fantasy, and soon cozy fantasy. That's in the editing stage. And welcome to my live stream.
Just some technical difficulties.
We just had a few technical difficulties there, which we've now sorted out.
No, we have not. That's what I just said to you.
Oh, we still have them.
Yes, because I had to shut the doors for the dog. So
yep.
Just keep talking. They see half of you.
Okay, I'm half here apparently, so I'll keep talking. Today we're coming to you earlier than our normal Tuesday evenings. We're coming to you in the afternoon so that those of my fans in Europe can participate. So this is 2:30 our time in London, Ontario, and we're going to try this once a month and see how it goes. So tonight's topic, I'm going to be talking about duty versus freedom in terms of characters and so on. And so I've got a number of talking points here that I'll go over. And as usual, we'll be taking questions and getting feedback from you, our viewers, and so on. So this we decided we have a lot of sales in the UK and Europe in general, so we thought it would be kind of nice to be able to broadcast a live stream when those people could join us.
Hi.
So if you're from, it'd be nice if you could just give us a shout out where you're from. If you're online on one of our
EP Werner
live
says hi.
streams. Oh, there you go, first one already. And yeah, so let's get right into this here. So let's first of all draw a comparison between how I'm defining duty versus freedom. So duty in the sense that I'm going to be talking about it is someone's obligation to follow either a ruler or a superior officer or something along those lines. So we think of that as typically in a military manner, following orders. But then that can also lead to issues, which I'll delve into as we go further on in the live stream. Choice is making a decision, but here we're talking about conflict between duty and choice, or another way to look at it is between duty and someone's sense of morality. Maybe they're given an order to do something, but it's not something they're willing to do. They're not willing to go that far in terms of the sense of duty for various reasons. A good way of looking at this, if you're familiar with the game Dungeons & Dragons, you think of alignments. This is kind of like comparing lawful good to chaotic good. With lawful good, you follow the orders with no questions. With chaotic good, you're more about the good than the lawful part. That is, you want to do the right thing, not necessarily what you've been ordered to do. So that maybe clears up a little bit the definition of how those terms are going to fit in. Now, very often what you get in a storyline could be a conflict between these. In a fantasy especially, most characters tend to serve in some manner a superior, whether that's a mage higher up in the order, like the Aes Sedai in Wheel of Time, for example, or they've got a king or a queen that they're supposed to be obeying, or maybe they're mercenaries and there's a mercenary captain that's in charge of them. So there's lots of different examples of that. And this is true in pretty much all of my books as well, with the exception of my upcoming cozy fantasy. But cozy fantasy is a whole nother ball game entirely. So, when is a character, or what's an example of a character being torn between this obligation to serve versus their sense of morality or their choice? Their choice is actually what makes the big difference. And, a very good example of this is in my very first book, Servant of the Crown. We have the main character right in the first chapter, in fact. The main character, Gerald Matheson, he's a sergeant. He's in charge of a small group of men. They've been deployed across a road in the city, the capital city of Winchester. They're under the orders of a noble who's like the captain of their detachment. And they're basically there to stop a riot. There's been a very bad harvest. The people are starving. They're rioting, or they're expected to riot. And so he's in charge of these men that are lined up to prevent trouble from occurring, to block them from, quite frankly, from going into the nicer parts of town and ruining people's businesses and so on. This is basically near the slums that this takes place in. And right off the bat, Gerald has his captain tells him to widen his line. He knows it's the wrong thing to do because he needs a tightly compact shield wall in order to hold back rioters and so on. And so he obeys the order, but then when the captain's not listening, he basically puts the men back the way they're supposed to be so that they can do what they're supposed to do. Now, these rioters get closer and closer. They hurl bottles and rocks and so on. One person gets injured, and Gerald, because he doesn't have his helmet on, and Gerald ends up taking this guy's spot in the line, but they hold. And the commoners that are rioting, they back up. They realize, they've got bottles and stones. Here's armored warriors with swords and shields and so on. They begin to retreat, but the captain loses his head and basically orders them all forward to massacre these, what he describes as peasants. And this is the first example, really, where Gerald is put in a rough situation. He's got to choose between his duty to his senior officer and his duty or his moral obligation to do what he's always been taught is the right thing to do. He knows these people are no longer a threat. The riot's over. Needless bloodshed is only going to make matters worse. Unfortunately, other events intervene, which sends him down the long path, which is really, this whole book is all about that. But all this is revealed in the very first chapter. So it's a very good example of someone who has to choose between doing what he's supposed to do versus doing what he should be doing from a sense of morality. And that's something, of course, that he's had ingrained in him through his years of military service to Lord Richard Fitzwilliam. He's a baron, very influential baron in the kingdom, and he is an honorable noble. He believes in the obligation of the nobles to serve the people rather than just thinking that the people serve him, which, of course, is how a lot of the rest of the kingdom at the time thinks about this situation. Now, this is not the only story where we have this kind of conflict. And to show you another example, I'm going to pull up Warrior. Oops, that's the wrong one.
Which one do you need?
I need Warrior Knight.
That is Warrior Knight.
No, it is Warrior Knight. Sorry, I read it wrong. I thought for a moment it was Warrior King.
You can also tuck it down in there if you need to. You don't have to sit on your lap. That's okay. You're done. So
in Warrior Knight, we basically have a character, Ludwig Altenberg. He's the son of a baron. He's the complete opposite of Gerald in a sense. He's fled his job, basically. He's supposed to be the son of a baron. He's supposed to inherit the barony. He's basically run away. He's he's actually not the nicest of people when you first meet him. He's full of himself. And this story is all about him transforming. But rather than doing his duty, he has literally done everything possible to avoid doing his duty. And he learns a lot of harsh lessons. And thankfully, he falls in with a group of mercenaries, including Sin and Sig, two of my favorite NPCs. That's non-player characters or background characters. Have a lot of fun with them, and they basically put him on the right path. And they follow him in the later books as well. They become trusted advisors and so on as Ludwig makes his way up through the hierarchy of nobility. Now, having said that, if I skip ahead a couple of books, this is book 2. In book 6, Ludwig actually ends up being a prince. Now, he's already, even in this book, he's already in the line of succession, but he's like 17th in line or whatever. He's not anyone who's going to seriously be crowned. Well, events take a turn for the worse or best, depending on your point of view. And by book 6, he is named heir to the crown. So there is a king. The king has no children. The next closest relative is Ludwig, surprise, surprise. Although there's a little bit more to it than that, but I'll leave you to read it to find out why. In any case, Ludwig is now put in a delicate situation. He's the prince. He has to obey his king, but there's recently been a civil war in the kingdom, and Ludwig gets on the king's nerves a little bit. Now, the king knows that Ludwig is fairly popular with some of the other nobles, so he doesn't just outright kick him out of the line of succession. Instead, he sends him to the eastern baronies, those that were in rebellion, and basically expects him to put the thumbs to them, if you like, punish them for their past transgressions, even though the previous king was trying a more reconciliatory approach in terms of getting along with them. Ludwig takes exception to this, and this is where the struggle comes in. He doesn't want to fight the king. He wants the king to come to his senses, but the king has fallen under the influence of other individuals, and this is causing problems. And so he has to struggle with his duty. He does everything he can to avoid a war. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work out that way.
Spoilers!
Spoilers, yeah, I should mention. I mean, we are talking about book 6 here.
Yes.
So yeah, it puts him in a very difficult position. And so he has to struggle in terms of what he's going to do. Now, those are not the only books where we have those sort of moral issues at play. Another example I have here is Ashes.
And these are all books that you've written, Paul.
These are all books that I have written, yes,
and
correct.
Where do people get them?
And you can get those at our website, pauljbennettauthor.com. And we sell both signed books, like actual physical print books, obviously, as well as ebooks. Or you can go to your favorite online retailer and get them through there.
Well,
or you could go to.
We'd like to see them on.
We like to see them too. More. If you hear a ding in the background, that's someone going to our website and purchasing something.
Or getting something for free.
Or getting something for free. Yeah, there's free stuff on there as well. Now, in Ashes, we have, or I have two main characters. I have Athgar. His story is that of, he's sort of an accidental mage in a sense. He doesn't realize he has magical potential until he undergoes a great ordeal of sorts. Don't want to spoil it for you. But my focus in this case is Natalia. Natalia is the result of generations of careful breeding to try to produce a very powerful water mage. And she is taken to this academy called the Volstrom. She is taught how to harness her power to make full use of the magical power that she has in her. She thinks this is great. She struggles at first because she's born to a peasant mother. She doesn't know who her father is, which is part of the mystery around her background. But eventually she gains acceptance because she proves through her magic that she's a valuable addition to the family. Now we call them the family. They're all take the name Stormwind because they're water mages, but they're not necessarily genetically related to each other. Some of them obviously are. So what they do is they find people with powerful magic potential. They bring them to this academy called the Volstrom, and if they pass all the tests and everything, they're sort of adopted into the family. They're given the name Stormwind. And so this is what I mean by family. It's almost more like an organization, really, than anything else. So it's called the line or the family. And Natalia does great. She graduates, and then she finds out that the family has some ulterior motives. They want her to breed with a fire mage in order to produce an even more powerful child. So she is a product of generations of breeding, and they want her to breed. This is the final straw for her. This is like full-on panic mode. She flees. She has some help fleeing through an old friend who's not a mage. She's actually what's called a mage hunter, someone who travels around the continent looking for potential people to bring to the Volstrom. So he helps her get away. And then strangely enough, through the course of the series, slight spoiler here, she meets Athgar, who is in fact a fire mage of some power. And so in a sense, she's fulfilling the prophecy she was born for, but not in the way that the family expected. And if anything, she's working against the family. So it's kind of a twist on that. So she's giving up that sense of loyalty to the family right off the bat, or very early in the story. I shouldn't say right off the bat. There's a few chapters where she's literally at the academy. And I think it's about 1/3 of the way through the book, the first book, where she breaks away and makes a run to sort of get away. And she encounters, as I mentioned, Athgar on the way. The two form a close bond, and then their story together continues on as the rest of the series progresses.
We have a few questions. If you can remember where you are in your little conversation.
Sure.
Little conversation. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. Paul Cooper wants to know, will we see Athgar and Natalia again, and the absolute power they can wield?
So Athgar and Natalia both appear briefly in Savior of the Crown, and they will also reappear in Victory of the Crown. It's kind of a crossover event, if you like. You'll also see them in an older form in a new series that I'll be starting next year, which we are calling The Duality of Magic. We haven't decided if we're going to put "the" on the front. I think, did we decide on the "the," or is it just duality?
You keep saying "the."
Yeah, I keep saying "the Duality of Magic."
We'll do that in the next newsletter.
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time. Okay. So yeah, they'll be there, but they'll be secondary characters. And yes, Natalia is actually one of, if not the most powerful mage on the entire continent. The other potential one vying for that would be Albreda, who's in the Art of the Crown series.
Chester wants to know if you have any advice for creating a magic system. I did type an answer that you created your own system, and then as a TTRPG game, play test it for 20 years, and then use that in your books. But you might want to go into more detail.
So I'm a big fan of what we call hard magic. So let me first explain the difference between hard magic versus soft magic. Hard magic has rules that you can follow. Pretty much any role-playing game that you play, if there's magic, it's a hard magic system. There are defined spells with defined effects and so on. Soft magic is also found a lot in fiction, where they just produce things out of, I won't say out of thin air. There's usually a reason that they have this power, but it's more sort of undefined or ethereal, if you like. A good example is Lord of the Rings. Does Gandalf have magic? Sure. Does he use his magic or demonstrate his magic? That's a whole nother argument you could have. You could make the argument that yes, he does, or no, he doesn't. But in any case, there is no, like, it doesn't just throw a fireball spell, for example, like you might in a role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons or something similar to that. So to my mind, I like stories where it's the character's decisions that matter, not just some all-powerful magic. You don't necessarily want to rely on magic alone to solve a plot line. It can certainly contribute towards that, But in my mind, and once again, this is just my opinion, everyone has their own opinion. I prefer a well-defined magic system so that the reader knows the limitations. You know, in my world of Idenworth, it's mentioned in multiple books. Magic is very powerful against an individual. It is not necessarily very effective against a lot of individuals.
Depends how you use it.
Depending how you use it, there are exceptions, of course.
When I use it.
Yes. Well, in the game, when you use it, though, you're spreading the damage out amongst multiple people instead of concentrating it. So it's a trade-off. So you can't just throw one spell up and eliminate, 50 enemy soldiers, for example, or send a fireball out that will destroy 20 people. That you could certainly have that in a game, in a book. That's not the way I went. I wanted magic to have a noticeable effect when used at strategic points, but it still comes down to the decision-making capabilities. I mean, if magic was that powerful, why have armies, right? Why not just have lots of mages under your employ? Which brings me to another topic. If you are going to have magic, you need to decide, is it common or is it rare? Now, when I actually run my tabletop role-playing game, magic is more common because players like to run around with magic swords and rings and staffs and whatever. But in the books, magic is rarer. I mean, in all of the books I've written, which is 36 so far, there's only 2 magic weapons actually mentioned. Both of them are hammers, actually. Nature's Fury, which is wielded by Beverly Fitzwilliam, and Stormhammer, which is wielded by a dwarf named Khazri Ironheart. So, yeah, if you want to come up with your own magical system, you need to decide how is it going to work. Mine is based on the elements. So, fire magic, water magic, earth magic, which is like druidic stuff, and which one did I miss? Air magic. And then there's also life magic and enchantments. Life magic is all about healing, but also talking with the spirits of the dead and so on. So there's a spiritual component to it. And then enchantments are spells that boost people, make them stronger, more weapon resistant, or make them able to hit people easier in battle and so on. Now, having said that, there are actually 2 other schools which are looked down upon. That's death magic, which obviously from the sound of it, you can gather that's kind of an evil thing. And then hex magic, which is the opposite of enchantments. And hex magic, instead of making people stronger, it makes them weaker in some manner. Kind of like curses, if you like, that you can cast on an enemy combatant that will make it harder for them to hit a target or do less damage or whatever. So that was the system I used. And then I also avoided creating leveled spells. So a spell is a spell, period. If you can throw a streak of fire, what determines how effective that streak is how much skill you have with magic. If you're not very skilled, that streak is only going to do a little tiny bit of damage. If you're very skilled, you could incinerate an individual. So every spell that I developed, and I have a database that keeps track of them all, scales with the amount of casting skill of the caster involved. And that pretty much comes across in the books. I mean, in my stories, there are some creative license in the sense that I'm not rolling dice to see how effective their skill rolls are when they're casting a spell, but you get the idea.
Yeah. I was just saying, but sometimes I think you don't roll dice, but you have to think about what's going to happen. Paul Cooper wants to say that he started with the Heir to the Crown, then went to the Frozen Flames series, and then went to Power Sending, and then he's really enjoyed and still does enjoy the world you've created.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Where are you coming from? Can you give us a idea what country you're in?
Oh,
I'm just going to drink my tea before it gets cold because it's already almost there.
oh, but you love cold tea. And then I did ask people which they prefer, a hard magic system or a soft magic system. We know that you prefer hard generally.
Yep.
But Godai says that both types of magic depends on the world where the story is happening. Sometimes they like hard and sometimes like soft. And I responded because I knew your answer. So that's a good way to look at it. But sometimes I find soft magic more of a plot point.
Yeah, that's just my take on it. I
Yeah.
mean, I've read books where it's been done really well.
Yes.
But I think you need to set that up. Otherwise, it does become a bit jarring. You know, if someone is like struggling with their ability to use magic, and then there's a breakthrough, and then they can suddenly harness it, that's interesting. You want to kind of see that struggle. But yeah, I always it's just my personal preference. But like I said, soft magic will work just as well, and given the right environment. I think environment is important for any of these kinds of decisions.
Paul Cooper. I keep saying Paul Cooper because your name is also Paul.
Yes.
He's from Midlands, UK, Staffordshire.
Staffordshire. I was actually no, I'm not sure where that is exactly. I was actually
Oh,
born
I thought you were going to say
in
you
Maidstone, in
Kent.
Kent.
Yeah. Adam wants to know, and just a second because it refreshed, if you have a process for, and this is TikTok refreshes, making a first draft manuscript specifically. So you might want to talk about how you don't do it like others.
Yeah, my process for writing is so far unlike anything I've seen other people do. um, so it's similar, I'm told, to something called the snowflake method. I like to call it the expansion method because I expand on things. Um, so every story starts with the gem of an idea. It actually, to be honest, it usually starts with characters. I have characters. I just find a character that's interesting, and then I want to tell a story about a character, and then it develops from there. And most of these characters are based on individuals that I've been using in my tabletop RPG, or one of Carol's characters in some cases. Uh, so yeah, it starts with a character, and I have an idea. What am I going to do with this character? Now, Heir to the Crown is kind of the exception, because in Heir to the Crown, yes, I did have the characters, but the first 5 books are really based on a storyline arc that I'd already developed for my role-playing campaign. But the Frozen Flame and Power Ascending, they started with the characters. So in Ashes, you meet Athgar and Natalia, who I mentioned earlier. They were 2 characters that I'd already developed previously. They're very different from what I had in them in my tabletop game, but the basic gem of the idea was still there. And it's kind of like the opposites attract kind of idea, like fire and water are opposite of each other. And yet I wanted to tell a story where these 2 people come together, and the concept of the story is that they are better together, or more powerful together, than they are when they're apart. So this is how the story builds and how the series builds. From there, I went to outlining mode. Now, I already knew the main story that was, I mentioned earlier that Natalia was fleeing from the family, the Stormwinds, and I knew that was the overarching storyline that I wanted for the series. And I think it's important too, when you're writing a book, is it a standalone book? Is it part of a trilogy or more books? You have to have an idea of, if it's going to be a series, you have to have an idea of the overall story arc. And then that's part of the process of coming up with the plot line. So the first book, I'll just talk about Ashes. They're going to meet, and we're going to resolve Athgar's issue, I guess you'll call it. So Athgar's village was attacked. The villagers were either killed or taken away as slaves. He's actually searching for his sister, who he couldn't find the body of. So he's assuming that she's been taken prisoner. And at the end of the first book, he manages to track down the person responsible. I won't give you the full details.
Spoilers.
But I had to know, like, how am I going to get to that point? So this is where the concept of expansion shows up. I start with a basic outline. It's 1 paragraph. I just open up a Word document. I take each line and expand on it. So I decide, like, there's going to be some traveling involved. I got to somehow bring these 2 characters together. How do I do that? Well, I came up with the concept that I already knew Natalia was running away from somewhere. And Athgar, he's leaving his village that he's lived in for years to go and search for his sister. So it only made logical sense that he would go to the closest big city in an attempt to find out more information. So that seemed like the logical place to have them introduced to each other. From there, I had to decide, how am I going to actually have them meet? Are they just going to bump into each other in the middle of the street? Oh, well,
Kind of did in a very roundabout way.
So I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but I put an interesting twist on that because Athgar sees some people up to no good, thinks he's going to go help someone, and he gets caught up in a fight that he didn't really expect, and in fact he gets injured by Natalia, who doesn't realize at first who he is. And so this is how they literally meet. She blasts him with an ice streak.
Almost kills him.
Almost kills him. From there, we have the developing story. They don't really tell each other a lot about their backgrounds. That comes out as the story progresses. They do find some clues as to who might have raided Athgar's village, and that leads them down a long river on a boat, out into the sea, to another port city, Karasis. And there's lots of adventures on the way, of course. Lots of fantasy books. The interesting parts are when they're traveling, they meet strange creatures, and all kinds of fun stuff happens, and they get a chance to use their magic and so on. So all this was expanded from just this one idea.
Okay, so that's quite an involved explanation. Yeah. Not just one of all your books.
Yeah.
All those books over there.
These are all the books I've written. All 36. Well, yeah. I don't think 36 are here because we don't have the Cyric books.
No,
they're not
36 doesn't include the
Cyric right. Books. This is just these.
But we do not have them.
We don't have them Arthurian Tales. That's
no, we do not. So I have some more questions for you.
Sure.
Nugi wants to know. Oh, that's someone downloading some of your books for free from your website. For those who heard the little ching there. Christian, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, and I seriously apologize, says that there's a character on Dexter with your exact same name. So I asked them, and they said, it's not a very nice character, so you're nothing like that.
Yeah, okay. Well, then, on Dexter, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a serial killer.
No, it's a character, not Dexter. It's a character on Dexter.
On the show Dexter. I know what you mean.
Okay.
Yes.
Nugi wants to know, what are your inspirations? They've gotten inspired by... You have to, my apology, every time somebody writes in TikTok, it does have some issues there. By famous characters, but they don't want to be a ripoff. So, for example, Lord of the Rings, right? That was what you first read. But your books, you don't steal anything from Lord of the Rings.
Right. So there's different ways you can look at this, right? Having a character concept, you can have a character that's similar to, say, Aragorn or Gimli or Legolas or whatever. But you want to try to sort of make it your own. There's nothing wrong with having an ace archer or a mighty swordsman or tracker or whatever. And then there's also, in some cases, authors will pay homage to a character or to a particular series. So there's lots of different ways you can look at it. I tend to base my characters. I play around with because I'm running a tabletop game all the time. I throw in lots of NPCs and stuff, and usually that's where I'll find a character that kind of sticks with me, and so I usually build from there. But can you take those ideas from other books? Certainly, but you want to make sure you're not doing an exact copy.
Okay. I did ask for the authors out there how they write their stories. Do they outline or sit and write, or a mixture of the two? And Gadai wanted to say they've tried outlining but feel like it's limiting their thought process. Do you have any tips? Then they go on to say they have so many ideas in their mind and they can really lose themselves in them, and then trying to work all that out.
So what I would suggest in that case is you just use a partial plot. I have very detailed plot outlines, but nothing says you can't just have a general outline. I think it some people can just sit down, write the book with no outline whatsoever, but it sounds like from what you're describing, that's a bit of a struggle. So I would suggest just having a light outline, maybe even just 1-page outline, so you know I need to get to this point and this point and this point to get to the end of the book. And maybe that might help give some focus when you're making the stuff up and doing the writing. But there's lots of different ways you can proceed. I would say if you've tried writing and it doesn't work, then try partial outlining.
Yeah, like a hybrid.
A hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So do you know where you were when you're talking about duty and freedom? To get
yes,
back?
well, I just finished talking about Natalia, actually.
Okay,
So we can get back to
yeah.
Another example. And this is actually, this example is someone who really, in a sense, puts duty above all, in fact. So this is Temple Knight. This is the first book in the Power Ascending series.
And where can people get it?
And once again, you can get that at pauljbennettauthor.com.
Yes.
Or your favorite online retailer, but you know.
Or you could order it from an independent bookstore. They also have access to it.
Yes, you can go to an independent bookstore.
Or your library.
Or your library.
Yeah, not
and get it from there. So the main character in these books, which are the odd-numbered books in Power Ascending, the main character is Charlene de Chandria, and she becomes a member of a religious fighting order. Now, they're an order dedicated to protecting women and the temples of St. Agnes. The order is actually called the Temple Knights of St. Agnes. And St. Agnes is one of the 6 saints that form the sort of the core of the main religion in the world of Aidenworth, or at least amongst the ruling classes anyway. Charlene is very much duty driven. Even though in her first assignment, she doesn't really get along well with her first captain. There are some issues there because the captain is not very effective as a leader, but she still obeys the orders and does her duty and so on. But what we see is later on when a new captain arrives, she blossoms because she is so dedicated to her order. The new captain, who also has some actual real experience, knows how to guide her and sort of gives her a taste of leadership, what leadership could be and what duty really means, like from the heart, not just words or
she has
commands.
heart and bounds.
Yeah. And so much so that by the time you get to book 7, spoiler alert, if you haven't read, in book 7, she's made Temple General, which is the highest rank in her order. That's years later, of course. And she is given a sort of unenviable order, if you like. Don't want to spoil the story, but it has huge ramifications for the entire continent. So she rises through the ranks in her order, and she basically is of the belief, her faith is such that she believes she's always where she's meant to be because she finds herself in those situations where she can make a difference. So that's another example of someone following duty. Now, let's see. Let me pull up.
Paul, how has medieval history inspired your portrayals of loyalty and rebellion in your books? You haven't talked about that yet.
I have not talked about that yet. Let me just, oops.
I just took it from what you were going to talk about. I'm helping you
yes,
out here.
I know, but I need to see my own notes as well. So,
well, I could read out your answers. It's kind of like going back to school. You had to prep for this.
Yes. Where am I here? Talking points. History.
Under examples.
Oh, yeah. So, history is full of examples of things like rebellions, right? Whether it's barons rebelling against their rightful king, outright civil wars. And I'm not just talking medieval time period, you know, the English Civil War is more sort of like 1600s. So the politics of that, I think, had an influence. Now, I'm not quite as Machiavellian as, say, the War of the Roses. I think, in some sense, I wanted to keep the political shenanigans fairly simple so
Shenanigans.
that, you know, readers could follow along and not be overwhelmed. Like, I want you to enjoy reading the story, not feel like you're about to take a test on the history of some place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, I want it to be an enjoyable read. So I don't tend to bog things down too much with those kinds of things. Other than that, I think a lot of the influence of history is from things like battles. I like to have battles that have something unique and interesting in them, not just necessarily two armies facing off against each other, although that does happen on occasion.
Just an interject a question. I'll tell you where you are when you come back. Adam wants to know what to use to write. Now, I did answer him Scrivener, but you have a bit of a story of what you started with and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I tried writing for years before I finally wrote Servant of the Crown. I wrote in notebooks, which is funny because I go back now and I read through those notebooks, and first of all, my handwriting is atrocious, so it's sometimes hard to figure out what I was writing. Then I started writing in just a word processor, and then I found Sigil. So Sigil was a free program. I don't know if it's still around. I would imagine it's out there somewhere. And you could just easily take text and put it into an EPUB. And then I could put it on my Kobo, or if you had a Kindle, I guess you could put it on a Kindle. But I've always had a Kobo. And I just thought that was so cool, seeing my words on my Kobo like it was an actual story. And I think that was my first real impetus to really start writing. Just being able to see it on the device like a professional book, and that got me going. I still haven't done outlining yet, but it is still around?
Yep.
Okay. So now I use a program that we purchased, Scrivener, which is available for both Mac and PC. We use the PC version. And it allows me to organize my storyline into folders, where each folder is a chapter. Now, you can break it down further if you want to into scenes. I like to just keep them in chapters for the sake of simplicity. It also makes it easier for me to keep track of where I am. It'll do a lot more than I use it for.
You use about 10% of its capabilities.
Yeah, 10%, but it allows me to do what I do. There's areas in there for like writing background notes on characters and all sorts of other neat stuff. So it's definitely worth your while to take a look at that. Now, they used to be able to use it for free for a limited time, I think it was, like a sort of a shareware kind of thing. Or you can just go online. If you go to YouTube, there's lots of videos on stuff you can do in Scrivener. Just be aware there are some slight differences between the Mac version and the PC version. But yeah, Scrivener for me has helped immensely. And when you're done, you can just export it into a Word document. For
free 30-day trial.
Yeah, there you go. Free 30-day trial. So, and that you just go to, I think it's Legends and Lattes or something, isn't it?
No,
not Legends and Lattes.
Literature and
Latte.
Legends and Lattes, a cozy
That's
fantasy
right.
book.
That's cozy fantasy.
I was like, where are you going with that?
Yeah, Literature and Lattes.
Yes, it's exactly where I went. That was funny. Well done.
Yeah, yeah. So it could be a cozy fantasy as well, maybe. It's got the name for it.
No, it does. Okay, do you remember where you were? You're talking about more dilemmas make characters more human than traditional heroes. From
yeah, so I don't know if I would use the term traditional heroes, because even a traditional hero sometimes has to face moral choices.
Yes.
Maybe you could say old-fashioned heroes. I'm not sure. I like characters who develop. They learn. They make mistakes. They're, you know, for me, I'm much more interested in seeing how did this person become the greatest swordsman in the kingdom versus they're just the finest swordsman in the kingdom. You know, I'd like to know, how did they get to that point? And I think that's a huge inspiration for me in developing, especially the characters of Gerald and Beverly in the Heir to the Crown series. And the same can be said for some of the mages that I have. How did they get that way? Natalia is kind of the exception. She begins very powerful, but Athgar has to sort of learn his way through. Oh, we have a friend here. This is Hazel. Down you get, bud.
Well, she just wants to say hi for a minute.
Hello. Okay.
Okay, Hazel, come.
Now we've got to pay the union. See, that's
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a speaking role. Hazel.
Well, that's true.
She'll come sit with you.
Yeah. Now, where was I?
You were talking about moral dilemmas and choosing between duty and what is right.
Yes.
And the traditional hero you were talking about.
Right. So yeah, having characters have to make that decision and growing as a result, I think, is an important aspect. And also you can see, especially in Heir to the Crown, you can see the influence of certain people on other characters. So the character of Anna basically collects people, if you like, and they tend to have a similar mindset. And that leads to, great things for the kingdom in general. And I think that's part of what makes the story so interesting, at least from my perspective. I mean, I had a lot of fun writing the series. I'm just finishing the series now, actually, with Victory of the Crown. That's not to say those characters may not show up again at some point in time, but I don't have any immediate plans for that once Victory is complete.
No, none at all.
Not for those characters. I have other characters I've got lots to do with, so I've got a schedule that's going to keep me busy for several years at least. And by then I'll have even more ideas. So
You ready for a question or two?
Sure.
This one you're always asked. I find it interesting that people would ask this of somebody, but then they don't want to ask themselves, how much money have you got from writing books?
So I'm not going to give you a dollar amount, but I will tell you it is our source of income.
Yes,
it pays
full-time.
The bills for both of us. And I'm not living the life of a millionaire or anything, but I'm making more here than I was in my last job. And we're comfortable.
6 figures.
Yeah.
Before expenses, and there are a lot of expenses being self-published.
I mean, if you look at an actual dollar value, it sounds really high, but then you got to look at all the expenses involved, so it comes down quite a bit.
Someone has a question, but I don't understand it. James asks how to manage literature and science at one time. So I'm thinking they're asking how to write science fiction, but I have asked them to explain because I don't quite understand it unless you do.
Yeah, I'm not sure literature and science.
Yeah.
I think my stories all take place in a sort of a quasi-medieval European-ish setting. So there's really not much science. There are scholars.
Yes.
But they, unlike modern scholars, a lot of their beliefs are conjectural.
Yes. A lot. Yes.
There's even an argument in one book about there's a life mage who can heal people, and she has a discussion with a physician who still follows the old principles, of the
it's the 4.
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called now. There's bile and
For humors, I think it
humors.
is.
Yeah, the 4 humors.
Yeah.
And so I kind of poke fun at that in a sense. And any practitioner of life magic, of course, they're not using medical knowledge, they're using magical powers.
Yes.
But they sort of look down on this. And of course, it goes the other way as well. A physician doesn't believe in magic, even though, they can see the results in front of their own eyes.
All right, we'll go back to the topic. When duty becomes a burden would be the next one to talk about. Examples from your series, if you have some. And I think you had an example from Warrior Prince.
Well, Warrior Prince, basically the entire book is about that conflict.
Yes.
So, the character of Ludwig is placed in a position where there's a brand new king on the throne. He expects things, he expects this king to be a just and fair ruler. Ludwig has already had issues with a fellow baron, and this has led to some difficulties and puts him in a bad position regarding his loyalty to the king. This is made even worse when he unwittingly uncovers a plot to foment a war, and then finds out who's really responsible. And so he's really thrown in the deep end after that. And basically, the entire book is all about him struggling. Like he wants to do everything he can possible to avoid this kind of conflict, but at the same time, he's not willing to give up his sense of morality. So that's a very important aspect. And I think Warrior Prince illustrates that more than any of the other books, to be honest, in that series. That obligation conflicts with his sense of morality.
Okay. So you have different cultures in your world of Aidenworth.
Mm-hmm.
How do they view loyalty and independence? Because they're definitely very different depending where you're from.
Yes. So if we look, so the big bad empire, if you like, the Mordor of the world, if you like.
Not quite the
It's
Mordor.
not really quite that. It's more like the Roman Empire, I guess.
Yeah.
It's called the Halvarian Empire, and they prize loyalty above everything, loyalty and duty, but they have their own factions. So even within that, their loyalty is to their faction first and then to the empire. So that is a very interesting dynamic. And they're probably the most extreme in terms of their views. They're really more about power and control, political power and control, which is in stark contrast to some of the other players, if you like, in the world. If you look at the Heir to the Crown books, the ruler of Merceria originally in the early books is more of a tyrant. Eventually, that becomes a more enlightened ruler who wants to do what's best for her subjects. I don't want to say too much more without giving away plot points, which is always
Spoilers.
an issue. So there's that aspect to it. So she wants people to have freedom in a sense. It's not like she's trying to control everybody. She believes that people can have different opinions without necessarily being enemies, and she has to deal, and the people around her have to deal with some of these troublemakers that she, doesn't necessarily just get rid of. So unlike the Empire, who basically eliminates anyone who's a problem,
Quite literally.
like literally, yeah, she realizes that yes, people can have a dissenting voice and still be a part of the kingdom. If we go to the Frozen Flame, we're now looking at things from more of an orc point of view. Now, the orcs are interesting in that they have a truly democratic society. They actually vote on who's going to be their next chieftain. They do something called the casting of stones, and no, I don't mean they're throwing stones. It means they drop stones into buckets to see who they're voting for. So it is, in essence, a democracy. And that's something that works for them because sociologically, orcs are well, they tend to follow the rules of the majority. They, as a society, have gone through a lot in their past history. They've only survived by working together. That means, even if you're on the losing side of a vote, you got to sort of put aside your differences in order to work together and make it possible for the tribe in question to succeed and to grow and so on. And this is across basically lots of different tribes. So each individual tribe obviously has its own chieftain, but also the shaman of the tribe plays a very important role as well. And they're meant to be an impartial mediator. They're not always impartial, of course. You see that fairly early, actually, in, let's see, which book would that be? That would be in Embers, I think it is. You get sort of more into how their society works. And some of that comes up in the Heir to the Crown series as well, but not until book 4. Yeah, book 4 and later. Because the orcs are really portrayed as almost the villains. In fact, in the second book, Sword of the Crown, the heroes of the main heroes of the story are literally fighting orcs towards the end of the second book.
All right, so let's talk about some of the fan favorite scenes that people have told you they really like, or you think would be a fan favorite. Now, I know you talked a little bit about when Gerald's ordered in the first chapter of Servant of the Crown, he's ordered to do something that he can't do it,
Right.
remember?
Right.
I think you have it in your notes there. And I think if you grab it, it's in Servant of the Crown.
So he is, yeah, he's literally, let's see, Servant of the Crown is here. So right in the first chapter, he's ordered to take the fight to the enemy. Let's see if I can find this real quickly here. No, oh, sorry. It's not in the first chapter. It's in the prologue.
Yes,
It's the only book in the series that has a prologue.
Well, so why do the rest of the books not have a prologue?
Because apparently some people don't read the prologue. So we stopped putting, I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be just a short first chapter, to be honest. But I wanted to have a prologue. So that's how it begins.
Yes. In the beginning.
In the beginning. And then what happens is, in fact, here's the scene right here. It says, sure enough, after the initial surge, the mob, resembling some obscene monster, backed away from the line, and the confidence that they had displayed began to be replaced with fear. The grim reality of swords versus clubs, of bottles versus shields and armor began to sink in. You could see it in the face of the townsfolk, the sudden look of terror as they realized what was about to happen. Gerald was glad. They would retreat, and the already tense situation would be over. The troops would have stopped the mob, and things would return to normal. All that changed in an instant. As the crowd began to cautiously back away, the captain found his voice. "Kill them," he screamed. "Kill them all."
That was this big spoiler.
Yeah, well, I mean, literally that's right at the very beginning in the prologue, so I'm not spoiling much. Yeah, so that's a scene I think really sets the tone. It's certainly a scene I enjoyed writing, and it sets the tone for character perfectly, right? He's like, oh, finally it's over, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, it's not.
It's just
Things
starting.
are just starting, and it's getting worse.
Well, what made you decide to start kind of with present and do a flashback in that book?
Well, so interestingly enough, the first version of the book before it was published, the first draft,
yes,
actually didn't do that. It just, the story continued straight on from that scene.
Yeah.
Like it went into the next chapter, but the next chapter didn't do any background stuff. And I had actually finished Heir to the Crown.
Nope, Servant of the Crown.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
And someone online had recommended that, you know, you write your first book, you put it away, you forget about it. I wrote the second book, Sword of the Crown, and I had learned a lot about writing by the time I'd finished that. That was my second book. And I remember I used to carpool with our youngest daughter, Amanda, and I would like tell her snippets and so on as we were driving to work. And she was the one that mentioned she really liked the filling in of the background. And so I went back and I added in all the background chapters, however many it is, I can't remember now, 3 or 4, I think it is.
4, yeah,
that
4
fill in Gerald's background and kind of explain how he got to where he was. So that was kind of a fun to write as well and explore.
All right. Well, that's the end of our live today. Do you want to tell them a little bit about next week's live?
Yes. So next week, what are we doing next
Writing
week?
Characters who endure. That's why you have your papers up there.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's this one up here. I was looking on my document on my...
No, I was trying to make it easy.
Yes. So next week we are talking about writing characters who endure. Characters who are memorable, ones that people want to read more about, and all the various things associated with that. So thank you for joining us this week, and a special thank you to those who from Europe who have joined us this week, which we are hoping to do this once a month at this time slot to make it easier for you to come and join. The rest of the time, other Tuesday nights will be on at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time.
We're -5 Greenwich.
-5 Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah.
That's right.
So thanks so much.
Thanks a
Say
lot.
bye, Paul.
Don't forget to visit pauljbennettauthor.com.
Keep saying bye, Paul.
And like and